The silver glass dome of the Galactic Assembly Hall shimmered under the light of 3 distant suns, suspended between the stars on an artificial gravitational node. The structure itself was a testament to the collaborative engineering of 12 ancient civilizations. From the outside, it resembled a perfect sphere, its surface reflecting the cosmos like a mirror polished to impossible perfection. Inside, however, the true marvel revealed itself. A circular chamber whose transparent ceiling displayed the vast expanse of stars, a constant reminder of what was at stake. Ambassador Elena Rivera approached the hall alone, her simple attire standing in stark contrast to the ornate ceremonial garb typically worn by representatives of advanced civilizations. She wore a tailored navy blue suit with minimal adornment, only a small earth insignia pinned above her heart. No guards, no advisors physically accompanied her, unlike the other representatives who often arrived with entourages of assistants and security details. Earth, the newest member of the Galactic Assembly, had been granted representation just 73 years prior, a blink of an eye compared to the millennia of membership enjoyed by the other species. As the doors parted, Elena took a deep breath. The chamber before her hummed with a quiet energy, both literal and figurative. At the center floated the circular energy table, a marvel of quantum engineering that allowed representatives to share data, memories, and sensations instantaneously. Around it hovered 12 ornate chairs, each designed specifically for the physiology of the civilization it represented. Some were mechanical constructs that accommodated gaseous beings. Others were pools of specialized liquid for aquatic species. Still others resembled nothing Elena had seen on Earth, serving beings whose form defied human understanding. Elena's chair, in comparison, was starkly utilitarian. A simple seat made of sustainable earth bamboo, modified only with minimal gravity anchors to keep it positioned at the table. It had been her specific request, a decision that had raised many eyebrows, or their equivalent appendages, among the assembly members. While others brought ornate cultural artifacts to showcase their civilization's achievements, Elena came with nothing but the knowledge in her mind and the neural link that connected her to Earth's advisory council. As she walked toward her position, the murmuring among the gathered representatives quieted. Her entrance never failed to create a ripple of curiosity, perhaps even discomfort. Unlike many members who communicated through sophisticated translation matrices or telepathic projections, Elena insisted on verbal communication, claiming it fostered a more deliberate and thoughtful exchange. "The Earth representative approaches," announced Zorlath of the Meridian Collective, their voice resonating through the chamber despite their lack of anything resembling a mouth. Their body, a collection of crystalline structures that pulsated with internal light, shifted to orient toward Elena. "Welcome, Ambassador Rivera," intoned Kavash, the eldest member of the Assembly and representative of the Astrogar Dominion. Their massive frame, covered in iridescent scales that reflected light in hypnotic patterns, loomed over the table. "We were just discussing the agenda for today's session." Elena nodded respectfully as she took her seat. "Thank you, Elder Kavash. I appreciate the Assembly convening on such short notice." "Short notice?" The question came from Tezek, the insectoid representative of the Fraxian Hive Network. Their compound eyes glittered with what Elena had learned to recognize as amusement. 3 solar cycles is hardly short notice for beings who live mere centuries. A ripple of what passed for laughter circulated around the table. Elena smiled politely. She had grown accustomed to the subtle condescension regarding humanity's relatively brief lifespan. To beings who measured their lives in millennia, humans were mayflies. Brilliant, perhaps, but ultimately ephemeral. "Nevertheless," continued Elder Kavash, "the Assembly recognizes Ambassador Rivera's request as valid under Section 7 of the Galactic Charter, the provision for emergency consultation regarding existential threats. Emergency, the word floated across the table from Elodia, the representative of the Celestian Communion, a collective consciousness housed in a humanoid form that shimmered between solid and gaseous states. Surely that's an overstatement. The monitoring systems show no imminent catastrophes in your solar system. Ambassador. Elena placed her hands flat on the table, feeling the subtle vibration of the energy field beneath her fingertips. The threat I wish to discuss today is not specific to Earth's solar system. Elodia. It concerns all 12,739 inhabited worlds under the Assembly's protection. This statement created a stir around the table. Beings shifted in their seats. Appendages twitched. Energy fields fluctuated. That is a bold claim, said Mokhtar of the Vrul Confederacy, their tentacled form contracting slightly. One that requires substantial evidence. I come prepared with evidence, Elena replied. But first, I would like to pose a single question to this esteemed body. Elder Kavash inclined their massive head. As is your right under the consultation protocols. Proceed. Ambassador Rivera. Elena stood. Unlike the other representatives who could manipulate the energy table directly through bioneural interfaces, she used a simple gesture, a flat hand moving upward, to activate her access protocols. The table responded to her movement, its surface rippling like water, before steadying into a clear, receptive state. In the 500 years since the establishment of the Galactic Threat Monitoring Network, Elena began, her voice calm but carrying throughout the chamber. How many existential threats has this assembly successfully prevented? The question hung in the air. No one spoke for several long moments. Elena remained standing, her gaze moving from one representative to the next, awaiting an answer. Finally, Elder Kavash spoke. Ambassador Rivera, the purpose of the network is to identify and neutralize threats before they manifest. Success, by definition, means the absence of catastrophe. I understand the purpose, Elena said. I'm asking for quantifiable results. The network has logged approximately 7 million potential threat scenarios over the past 5 centuries, offered Tezik, their mandibles clicking as they spoke. All were analyzed, categorized, and addressed according to protocol. Addressed, Elena repeated, the word hanging in the air. Not resolved? Semantics, dismissed Zorlath with a wave of a crystalline appendage. The network assigns probability factors to each scenario. Those exceeding certain thresholds are given resources for intervention. Elena nodded. And what is that threshold? The standard is 0.7 probability on the Galactic Threat Index, replied Mokhtar. As established by the founding members 3,000 years ago. So, Elena continued, threats with a 0.69 probability of occurrence, threats that are more likely than not to manifest, receive no action from this assembly. Elodia's form rippled with what Elena had come to recognize as agitation. Ambassador, you oversimplify complex regulatory frameworks that have been refined over millennia. The system works. Does it? Elena placed her palm flat on the energy table again. This time, the surface responded by projecting a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy above the table. Scattered throughout were pulsing red dots of varying sizes. With the Assembly's permission, I would like to present Earth's findings. There was a moment of hesitation before Elder Kavash nodded. Proceed. These red indicators represent threats that fell below your 0.7 threshold over the past century, but subsequently manifested. Elena explained. 327 extinction-level events on developing worlds. 17 interplanetary conflicts that resulted in the complete destruction of civilizations. 42 cosmic anomalies that altered the habitability of entire star systems. The representatives shifted uncomfortably as the data materialized above the table. This information is not new to us, said Tezik dismissively. These were calculated risks. Resources are finite, even for the Assembly. What about this? Elena gestured again. and the galactic map zoomed in on a particular spiral arm. The Cygnus Void, once home to the Talaran civilization. Their sun destabilized 74 years ago. The network identified the probability of stellar collapse at 0.68, just below your threshold for intervention. An unfortunate loss, acknowledged Kavash gravely. But the Talarans had achieved interstellar travel. Our records indicate that 62% of their population successfully evacuated. And the other 38%? Elena asked quietly. Silence fell across the chamber. Ambassador! Mokhtar broke the silence, their voice carrying a note of irritation. What precisely is the purpose of this interrogation? The Assembly has existed for thousands of years. Earth has been a member for less than a century. Perhaps there are nuances to galactic governance that you have yet to fully appreciate. Elena remained unperturbed. I appreciate that my species is new to this table. That's precisely why I'm here today. She gestured again, and the display changed to show a series of complex graphs and projections. These are predictive models created by Earth's quantum supercomputers, incorporating data from the network itself. The representatives leaned forward, studying the projections with varying degrees of comprehension and concern. According to our analysis, Elena continued, the current threat detection and response protocols will fail to prevent a galaxy-wide catastrophe within the next 43 years. Not might fail, will fail. Preposterous, scoffed Zorlath. Your computational systems are primitive compared to ours. The Meridian Collective has been running similar simulations for millennia. Have you? Elena asked. Or have you been running the same simulations with the same parameters for millennia? She turned to address the entire table. When was the last time any of you questioned the foundational assumptions of your threat assessment models? The silence that followed was telling. Ambassador Rivera, Elder Kavash spoke carefully. Your concerns are noted, but the network's methodologies have been refined over thousands of years by the greatest minds of 12 advanced civilizations. And therein lies the problem, Elena said quietly. The network was designed by the same minds that evaluate its effectiveness. There is no external validation, no fresh perspective. She paused. No one asking uncomfortable questions. You suggest bias in our systems? Elodia's form pulsated rapidly, a sign of agitation. Not intentional bias, Elena clarified. Something more insidious. Institutional complacency. The eternal confidence that comes from millennia of perceived success. This is absurd. Tezek's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Assembly oversees the most sophisticated monitoring system in known space. A system that has become predictable, Elena countered. And predictability is vulnerability. She gestured again, and the display changed to show a new set of data, transmission patterns across various sectors of the galaxy. These are communication anomalies detected by Earth's independent monitoring stations over the past decade. Patterns that match no known civilization within the Assembly registry. The representatives studied the new data with growing concern. You're suggesting, Mokhtar began. I'm stating, Elena corrected firmly, that there are entities operating within Assembly space that have learned to exploit the blind spots in your monitoring systems. Entities that understand the 0.7 threshold and deliberately keep their activities just below it. Impossible, Zorlath declared, though their crystalline structure had dimmed slightly, a sign of uncertainty. The network's algorithms are constantly evolving. Are they? Elena challenged. Or are they merely iterating within parameters established thousands of years ago? She pointed to a particular cluster of anomalies. This region has experienced 47 separate incidents over the past 3 years, each individually assessed at approximately 0.65 probability. Not one received Assembly intervention. As per protocol, confirmed Elder Kavash, though their voice had lost some of its certainty. And if I told you that, collectively, These incidents form a pattern with a 0.98 probability of indicating coordinated hostile action, Elena asked. The chamber fell silent again, this time with a palpable tension. That would be, Elder Kavash began. Alarming, finished Elodia. It should be, Elena agreed. But more alarming is that your system failed to connect these dots because they occurred in separate jurisdictional zones, each overseen by different monitoring committees who never compare notes. She waved her hand once more, and the display shifted to show a timeline of assembly interventions over the past 5 centuries. In 500 years, the assembly has authorized just 73 direct interventions. In that same period, there have been over 8,000 events that resulted in the loss of sentient life on a planetary scale. Many of those were natural evolutionary processes, argued Tezik. The assembly does not interfere with the natural development of civilizations. Is that what you tell yourselves? Elena asked quietly. That these were all simply the natural order of things? That your inaction was respect rather than neglect? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Elena could see the discomfort rippling through the various representatives. Some communicated silently among themselves, energy patterns and pheromones conveying messages that human senses couldn't detect. Others remained perfectly still, processing her accusations. Ambassador Rivera, Elder Kavash, finally spoke, their voice carefully measured. While we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm for galactic security, perhaps there are cultural differences at play here. Humanity's history is marked by rapid change and constant upheaval. The older civilizations represented here have learned the value of measured response, of careful deliberation. With respect, Elder, Elena replied, what you call measured response, Earth calls paralysis by analysis. What you see as careful deliberation, we recognize as institutional inertia. She looked around the table. The universe doesn't wait for committee decisions. Threats don't pause while subcommittees draft reports. You advocate for what then? Asked Mokhtar, their tentacles twisting in agitation. Rash action? Preemptive strikes based on incomplete data? Such approaches have led to more devastation throughout galactic history than inaction ever has. Elena shook her head. I'm advocating for a complete restructuring of the network's operational protocols. Lower thresholds for investigation, if not intervention, cross-jurisdictional task forces, independent verification of threat assessments. She paused. And most importantly, a willingness to act decisively when patterns emerge, even if individual data points fall below arbitrary thresholds. Such changes would require a complete overhaul of systems that have functioned effectively for millennia, objected Zorlath. Have they functioned effectively? Elena challenged. Or have they simply functioned without being questioned? She gestured to the display still hovering above the table, showing the countless red dots representing lost civilizations and extinct species. Ask the Talarans if the system functioned effectively. Ask the 17 billion sentient beings who perished in the Helios cluster collapse. That's hardly fair. Elodia's form flickered rapidly. Those events were predictable. Elena interrupted. They were predictable, and they were preventable, but they required someone to make a decision that wasn't prescribed by ancient protocols. Elder Kavash's scales shifted color slightly, a sign that Elena had come to recognize as deep thought. Ambassador, while your passion is admirable, you must understand that the Assembly operates on consensus. Any fundamental change to the network would require unanimous agreement from all member civilizations. Then I formally request such a vote, Elena said firmly, as is Earth's right under Section 12 of the Charter. A murmur ran through the chamber. Section 12 was rarely invoked. It required each representative to take a definitive position, with no abstentions permitted. Very well, Elder Kavash conceded after a moment. The Assembly will now vote on Ambassador Rivera's proposal to restructure the Galactic Threat Monitoring Network. They turned to Elodia. Celestian communion. What say you? Elodia's form stabilized into its most solid state, a sign of resolve. The communion has relied on the network's wisdom for over 2,000 years. We see no compelling reason to undertake such a dramatic restructuring based on the concerns of our newest member. The Celestian Communion votes against. Elder Kavash nodded and turned to the next representative. Fraxian Hive Network, what say you? Tezik's compound eyes glittered. The Hive values stability above all. While we respect Earth's perspective, we cannot support a proposal that would introduce chaos into a functioning system. The Fraxian Hive Network votes against. One by one, each representative cast their vote. As Elena had anticipated, all 12 ancient civilizations voted against her proposal. When her turn came, she stood once more. Earth votes in favor, she said simply. And in accordance with Section 14 of the Charter, Earth formally registers its protest against the Assembly's decision. Elder Kavash inclined their massive head. So noted. Is there anything else you wish to add, Ambassador Rivera? Elena looked around the table, meeting the gaze, or sensory apparatus, of each representative in turn. Just this. The greatest threat to this galaxy isn't some external force. It's not cosmic anomalies or hostile invaders. She paused. It's the eternal confidence of those who believe their systems are infallible, because they've never been truly tested. She gestured one final time, and the display above the table changed to show a simple countdown. 43 years, 127 days, 14 hours. This is how long Earth's models give us before catastrophic failure of the current system. This is the time we have to act. She looked around the table once more. Earth will continue its independent monitoring and will develop its own response protocols. We invite any civilizations who share our concerns to join us in this effort. With that, she stepped back from the table, signaling the end of her presentation. The chamber remained silent for several long moments before Elder Kavash spoke again. The Assembly thanks Ambassador Rivera for her passionate address. This session is now concluded. We will reconvene at the next scheduled interval to discuss standard matters. As the representatives prepared to depart, Elena remained standing by her seat, watching as they communicated among themselves. Some pointedly avoided looking in her direction. Others cast what she interpreted as concerned glances her way. She had expected resistance, even dismissal, but something in their reactions suggested she had struck a nerve. As the chamber emptied, Elena finally took a seat, activating her neural link to Earth's Advisory Council. It went exactly as predicted, she subvocalized, the link transmitting her thoughts to the waiting team back on Earth. Complete rejection of the proposal, but signs of disturbance in their unified front. Excellent, came the response from Dr. Sophia Chen, Earth's chief strategist. Phase 1 complete. Monitor for individual approaches within the next 12 hours. Elena acknowledged the instruction and disconnected the link. She remained in her seat, watching as the last of the representatives filed out of the chamber. Only when she was completely alone did she allow herself a small smile. The seeds had been planted. Throughout the night cycle, Elena remained in her quarters adjacent to the assembly hall, reviewing data and preparing for what she anticipated would be a series of private consultations. The neural link to Earth remained open, allowing real-time analysis of any new developments. The first contact came sooner than expected. Just 3 hours after the session concluded, her communication console chimed softly. Ambassador Rivera, came the melodic tones of Elodia's translated voice. Might we speak privately? Elena activated the secure channel. Of course. Representative Elodia, how may I assist you? The communication remained audio only, a curious choice for a being whose physical form was an integral part of their expression. Your presentation today was disquieting, Elodia began carefully. While the Celestian Communion publicly stands with the Assembly's decision, There are factions within our collective that find merit in your concerns. I appreciate your candor, Elena replied. Earth doesn't seek to disrupt for disruption's sake. We genuinely believe the current system is inadequate. Perhaps, Elodia hesitated. Perhaps there is room for some adjustment. Not the complete overhaul you proposed, but certain refinements. Any step toward improvement is welcome, Elena said diplomatically. Would the communion be open to participating in unofficial discussions about such refinements? Unofficially, yes. Elodia's voice carried a note of caution. But you must understand our position. The communion has been part of the assembly since its founding. We cannot be seen as the first to break ranks. Understood, Elena assured her. Discretion will be paramount. After Elodia's communication ended, others followed in quick succession. Tezek of the Fraxian Hive Network, expressing similar reservations about the network's rigidity. Mokhtar of the Vrul Confederacy, hinting at internal disagreements within their own governing structures about the appropriate response to Elena's data. By the time the station's artificial cycle had shifted to morning, Elena had spoken privately with representatives from 5 of the 12 ancient civilizations. Each conversation followed a similar pattern: public solidarity with the Assembly's decision, but private concerns about the evidence she had presented. It's working better than we anticipated, she reported to the Earth Council. They're fracturing along predicted lines. Excellent, replied Dr. Sophia Chen. Proceed to Phase 2. When Elena entered the assembly hall the following day, she immediately sensed something had changed. The representatives were already gathered, engaged in hushed conversations that abruptly ceased as she approached. The energy in the room felt different, tense, expectant. Elder Kavash was the first to acknowledge her presence. Ambassador Rivera, we were just discussing yesterday's session. I hope it was productive, Elena replied neutrally, taking her seat at the table. Indeed. Kavash's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue, a sign Elena had learned to associate with formal declaration. In fact, the assembly has been in emergency session since your departure yesterday. Elena raised an eyebrow but said nothing. After careful consideration of the data you presented, Kavash continued, certain discrepancies have been identified in the network's historical assessment protocols. Discrepancies, Elena echoed, maintaining her composure despite the surge of vindication she felt. Yes, it was Zorlath who spoke now, their crystalline form pulsating with an internal light that seemed dimmer than usual. Upon review, we have discovered that the 0.7 threshold was never meant to be a fixed value, but rather an adaptive baseline that should have evolved with new data. An oversight, added Tezek, mandibles clicking rapidly. That appears to have been perpetuated through multiple generational transitions of administrative authority. Elena nodded slowly. I see. And has the Assembly reached any conclusions about how to address this oversight? The representatives exchanged glances, or whatever passed for glances among their varied physiologies. There was a palpable hesitation in the chamber. Finally, Elder Kavash spoke again. Ambassador Rivera, the Assembly has existed for millennia, based on principles of consensus and gradual evolution. Your approach yesterday was unprecedented in its directness. I apologize if Earth's communication style caused discomfort, Elena offered diplomatically. Different cultures have different approaches to addressing challenges. No apology is necessary, Kavash replied, surprising her. In fact, it is we who must acknowledge a failure. The very stability we have prized has become, as you suggested, a form of complacency. Elena remained silent, waiting for Kavash to continue. The Assembly has reached a decision, the elder representative announced. We will establish a special committee to review and revise the network's operational protocols, with a particular focus on cross-jurisdictional threat assessment and response thresholds. It was a small concession, far less than the complete overhaul Elena had proposed, but it was movement in the right direction. She inclined her head in acknowledgement. Earth appreciates the Assembly's willingness to consider reforms, she said carefully. We would be honored to contribute to this committee's work. Actually, Elodia interjected, her form shifting rapidly between states. There has been a more significant development that Elder Kavash has not yet mentioned. All eyes turned to the Celestian representative. The communion has decided, Elodia continued, her voice carrying an unusual note of resolve, that the time has come for more dramatic action, effective immediately. The Celestian Communion is withdrawing from the Galactic Assembly and realigning its security protocols independently. A shockwave seemed to ripple through the chamber. Nothing like this had happened in thousands of years, a founding member withdrawing from the Assembly. Before anyone could respond, Tezek rose from their seat. The Fraxian Hive Network must also announce its withdrawal. While we respect the Assembly's traditions, we cannot ignore the evidence presented by Earth. The network has failed in its primary function, and we can no longer entrust our civilization's security to a system we now recognize as flawed. One by one, representatives rose from their seats, each announcing their civilization's withdrawal from the Assembly. Elena watched in stunned silence as the impossible unfolded before her eyes. This was not part of Earth's strategy. They had anticipated resistance, gradual change at best, not this wholesale collapse of the galactic order. Within minutes, 12 representatives had declared their intentions to withdraw, leaving only Elena and 3 others still seated at the energy table. The representatives from the Astragar Dominion, the Vrul Confederacy, the Meridian Collective, and Earth. Elder Kavash, who had remained seated throughout the Exodus, finally spoke. It seems, Ambassador Rivera, that your single question has accomplished what centuries of debate could not. You have broken the Assembly. Elena met the Elder's gaze steadily. Breaking was never our intention. Elder Kavash, reform was our goal. Perhaps, Kavash conceded. This breaking was necessary for true reform to begin. They gestured to the now empty seats around the table. The old Assembly is gone. What would you propose in its place? Elena hadn't expected to be asked this question so soon. She had come prepared to argue, to persuade, to fight against institutional inertia, not to rebuild from scratch. But Earth's Council had prepared for multiple scenarios, including this one. A new coalition, she said, after a moment's consideration. Not based on tradition or historical alliances, but on shared commitment to active security, flexible, adaptive protocols that evolve with new threats, decentralized monitoring stations with independent verification of findings, and most importantly, a decision-making structure that values timely action over perfect consensus. Kavash considered her words. The Astragar Dominion has existed for over 10,000 years because we understand the value of adaptation. We would be willing to explore this new coalition. As would the Vrul Confederacy, added Mokhtar. Though I must note the irony of finding ourselves aligned with the youngest civilization at this table. Perhaps that's precisely why we find ourselves here, suggested Zorlath of the Meridian Collective. New perspectives have value precisely because they are unconstrained by old assumptions. Elena nodded. Then let us begin. Earth has developed preliminary frameworks for a new security alliance, one that preserves the sovereignty of each civilization while creating more robust collective defense mechanisms. She activated the energy table, projecting a new set of models and protocols above its surface. The remaining representatives leaned forward, studying the proposal with interest. This is quite different from the Assembly's approach, noted Kavash, scales shifting through patterns that Elena recognized as indicating deep analysis. It is, Elena agreed. It prioritizes rapid response over exhaustive deliberation. It assumes that false positives, Investigating threats that turn out to be benign are preferable to false negatives, ignoring threats that prove catastrophic. A very human approach, observed Mokhtar, though there was no condescension in their tone. Your species has always been willing to act on incomplete information. Sometimes necessity demands it, Elena replied simply. The four representatives spent the next several hours discussing the details of Earth's proposal, refining and adapting it to accommodate the diverse needs of their respective civilizations. As the station's cycle shifted toward evening, they had established the foundation for a new alliance, one that would eventually be called the Galactic Response Initiative. We should formalize this agreement quickly, urged Zorlath. The withdrawal of the other civilizations creates a dangerous security vacuum. Agreed, said Elena. Earth proposes implementation within 24 hours. Our monitoring systems are already operational and can be integrated with yours immediately. So soon? Kavash seemed surprised. Such transitions typically require months of preparation. Elena smiled slightly. Earth has been preparing for this possibility since we first detected the anomalies in the network's effectiveness. We have resources ready to deploy. The three ancient representatives exchanged glances. You anticipated this outcome, Mokhtar realized, tentacles twisting in what Elena had learned to recognize as amusement. This wasn't a spontaneous proposal. It was a calculated strategy. Earth believed in the necessity of reform, Elena replied carefully. We prepared for various scenarios, including both incremental change and more dramatic restructuring. But not for the complete dissolution of the assembly, Kavash suggested. No, Elena admitted. That was unexpected. Yet fortuitous for your objectives, noted Zorlath. Elena met the crystalline being's gaze directly. Fortuitous for the galaxy. If it leads to more effective security measures, Earth has no interest in dominance, only survival, the same as every civilization represented here. After a moment, Kavash inclined their massive head. The Astragar Dominion agrees to the 24-hour implementation timeline. We will begin transitioning our monitoring resources immediately. The others quickly followed suit, and within moments, the new alliance was established. The four representatives activated the energy table together, their combined gesture symbolizing their shared commitment to the initiative. As the meeting concluded, Elena prepared to return to her quarters. The events of the past 2 days had unfolded at a pace that even Earth strategists hadn't anticipated. The complete restructuring of galactic security arrangements that might have taken decades under normal circumstances had been accomplished in less than 48 hours. Before she could leave, Elder Kavash approached her privately. Ambassador Rivera, they began, their voice lower than usual. I must confess something to you. Elena waited, curious. The assembly was not as united as it appeared, Kavash continued. Many of us had recognized the flaws in the network for centuries, but the weight of tradition and the complexity of our interspecies politics made reform virtually impossible. Then why didn't anyone speak up? Elena asked. Kavash's scales shifted to a pattern Elena hadn't seen before, something melancholy, perhaps regretful. Because none of us were willing to be the first to break rank. We were all trapped in a dance of mutual assurance, afraid that questioning the system would be seen as an attack on the assembly itself. And now, Elena prompted. And now, Kavash replied. You have given us all the opportunity to do what many of us have long known was necessary. Your question wasn't just a challenge, it was permission. Permission to acknowledge what we had all silently recognized. Elena considered this revelation. That wasn't our intent, but I'm glad if it served that purpose. Intent is often less important than impact, Kavash observed. Whatever your strategy, the result is a chance for genuine improvement. They paused. The countdown you showed us, 43 years until catastrophic failure. Was that real? Yes, Elena said simply. Earth's best models give us 43 years to establish new security protocols, before the threats we've detected reach critical mass. Then we have work to do, Kavash concluded. As Elena finally left the chamber, she activated her neural link to Earth's Advisory Council one last time. It's done, she reported. The new initiative is established, with implementation to begin immediately. All 12 civilizations withdrawn, came Dr. Sophia Chen's surprised response. No, Elena corrected. 4 remained, including Earth. The others may return once they've processed the shock. But for now, we have a core group committed to the new approach. Remarkable, Chen replied. And the timeline? Accelerated beyond our most optimistic projections, Elena said, as she walked through the corridors of the station. Now eerily quiet compared to the usual diplomatic bustle. Full implementation within 24 hours. And the assembly itself? Elena paused before responding. Transformed. Not destroyed, but reborn into something that might actually serve its purpose. Then it seems, Chen's voice carried a note of satisfaction, that the only human in the room asked exactly the right question. As Elena approached her quarters, she glanced out a viewport at the vast expanse of stars beyond. Somewhere out there were the threats Earth had detected, patient, calculating entities that had learned to exploit the blind spots in the old system. But now, the rules had changed. The galaxy's oldest civilizations had been shocked out of their complacency, and a new alliance was forming, one built on action rather than deliberation. The countdown still ticked in her mind. 43 years to avert catastrophe. It wasn't much time on a galactic scale, but it was a chance. And sometimes, Elena reflected as she entered her quarters. A chance was all you needed. That, and the courage to ask uncomfortable questions. The chamber she left behind remained silent, the energy table still glowing softly in the center. Around it, 12 empty seats, symbols of an age that had ended. And in their place, the foundation of something new, something adaptive, something that might just save the galaxy from the coming storm. Elena Rivera, the only human in the room, had asked one question. 12 species had resigned the very next day. And in that void, hope had taken root. A hope born not from complacency, but from the uncomfortable recognition of failure and the determination to do better. 43 years. The clock was ticking, but for the first time in centuries, someone was listening.